Hi, I'm Matt Watts, and this is my podcast all about the vastly different experiences we have on the internet. As the US election illustrates, we can each see completely different things online, whether that be opposing political content, different trends, different platforms. At times, it can feel like the internet hosts completely separate realities that we dip into via our screens. And that's what this podcast is all about. For example, this week, memes led me to discover an entirely new world, with a history and lore that span thousands of years. A world in which the fractured remnants of mankind are battling for their own survival against the insurmountable forces of chaos. I'm talking about the world of Warhammer 40k. To be clear, I've never played Warhammer, I've never stepped foot in a Games Workshop, despite Warhammer World being about 5 miles from my house, but the internet decided, in its infinite wisdom, that I seem like the target audience for Warhammer memes, which I should probably take as some sort of insult. But I found myself intrigued. Warhammer's one of those things that I've always been aware of, but I've never really known anything about, despite the fact that I used to commute past the worldwide headquarters of it every day. And the depth and the breadth of the information about it on the internet is incredible. It makes Tolkien's Silmarillion look like a mere pamphlet. The grim, dark future it conjures up also gave context to a piece of art I saw referenced this week. It's a gigantic sculpture called God Emperor Trump that was made by an Italian artist back in 2019, and it depicts Donald Trump as the brain-dead yet immortal emperor of the Imperium of Man, the totalitarian regime that forms the closest thing to good guys in the Warhammer world. Trump's supporters, of course, saw this as a compliment. Now, don't worry, you don't need to stage an intervention because I'm not going to start playing Warhammer. But it's fascinating that in a short amount of time, I've learned a lot about this fictional world via the internet without once engaging with an official source from Games Workshop, without reading any of their books, watching any of their videos. I've learned it all from the internet's secondary sources. Let's put that aside though, because this podcast is not about politics or, thankfully, Warhammer. It's about the esoteric ways we each engage with the internet, which brings me on to this week's guest. I first heard about Adam on the subreddit for My City. He'd become something of a character on there. Most notably, he'd started using the subreddit to reach out to strangers and organise big social events, which were something of a wholesome success story, connecting local strangers who were feeling lonely and getting them to hang out together.
Then I just decided to post on Reddit asking if anybody wanted to go on a night out with me. So I put the post out there having no expectations, and I was still going to go out if people joined me or if they didn't join me. At the start, I didn't really get much interaction.
What did the post say?
Just said as simply as, does anybody fancy a night out tomorrow night? That was it. I didn't say anything else. Somebody commented, you maybe need a bit more description. So I just said, yeah, we're going to the pub and bars and clubs, and this is me, and I'm this age, and if anybody's up for it, you just say yes and join in. The night of it, I had one person at 5 o'clock go, yes, I'll come out, I'll meet up with you and whatever. And they wanted to call me as well, which I don't blame them. You're meeting a random stranger off Reddit, really, and Reddit's Reddit. So, and I'd never really used Reddit before then either. And
what drew you to it at that point then?
I went through the social medias going, where can I put something out there that a random pool of people that are local to me will say yes or no to coming out and whatever. And I even quickly looked at apps that were specifically made for that, and they were all had paywalls up and stuff. So It made no sense trying to do that, because it meant that the only way I'm going to be able to interact with somebody is if they've paid already to try and do that.
So tell me about that one person who came along. What were they like, and how was your night?
So at 5 p.m, that's how the night was starting, and we just arranged to like meet in the centre of the city, and we were just gonna like go to the first like local pub, and I was content with just one person. Like it didn't matter to me. But as it got closer to when we were going to meet up, because I put just a second post out as well, I then started getting more of an influx of interest and more people wanting to come out as well. So that one person ended up turning into 5 when I first got there. It was just 5 and me and a few other random people. And in the end, the night ended up with about 17, I think, different people from Reddit that had just seen my post, and we were in the first pub, and we were, in my head, we were just going to be there an hour or so and then move on. But because I was getting such an influx of messages with so many different people like, oh yeah, I'm interested, I'll come, I'm interested. We ended up being there for like 2.5 hours to start with. And all these people just carried on joining in. And it was, I was trying to have conversations with these people I'd just met whilst like texting on my phone as well to just like get this arrangement so they come out and meet up with me. And that happened the first time, and I felt like it was like an unbelievable feeling afterwards. It was not necessarily the success of the night, and overall the night was solid. Really, just went to a few bars, went to the pub to start with, of course, and then went to a nightclub at the end. And people came in and out whenever they liked, and there was a lot of like positivity at the end of it, and people saying how much like they enjoyed themselves and they're glad they came. And
so that's where Adam ended up, taking the initiative to go out and meet people. But prior to that, he'd also posted about an addiction or reliance on the internet and technology.
It's something like when it gets to the end of the day and people just kind of switch off, and you always find yourself kind of scrolling through social media, and you can end up just kind of getting caught up in doing that too much. So if maybe you've not had a great day, instead of dealing with that day not being great, you just kind of go straight onto your phone, you scroll the night away, and then you just go to bed. And then that like negativity or that emotion, it could be a good emotion or a bad emotion, has never been properly dealt with. And then it maybe resurfaces that next day.
And when you kind of have that bad day, you go home, you start looking at stuff, where are you drawn to?
Just anything, particularly that just provides that like kind of dopamine hit, really.
Adam grew up with the internet and social media, feeling its influence throughout his teenage years.
My day, apart from like away from school and stuff, was full of a lot more dopamine high activities. So,
what kind of age are we talking here?
So, from just like secondary school, or from probably from secondary school and stuff like that. You then would use stuff like video games, just spend all day kind of playing. So just play like FIFA, for example, and just play FIFA Ultimate Team, and I'd just get into it that much. There was a genuine interest there as well, but there was more than just like that. There was kind of that reliance of how the video game was set up, and particularly in a lot of video games, you've got like set points and set markers that give you this like easy achievement. And when you kind of going about maybe studying for a test or something like that, it's a lot less like, you get a lot less pleasure from sitting down for a week, studying for a test, and maybe getting something out of it in the end, unless you're kind of that way wired. But I was very much more gravitating towards the video games and stuff. So I would much prefer to play a video game, have that pleasure from maybe just like winning a match, or like building this team that kind of works really well, or something, or just like any kind of game really, over sitting down and trying to just get yourself to go through it, because your brain's kind of so wired in that sense, and it kind of becomes a bit of a distraction. So you could end up using it was just like a mix. It could be video games, could be social media, could be porn, could be just any of that type of stuff where the dopamine is it just pulls you in more, but all it does is take you actually away from being able to progress or anything in life. So
it sounds like you're describing a shortcut to reward.
Yeah.
So video games were the first one where on one hand you had the exams, which is kind of long-term reward. On the other hand, you had video games, short-term, really easy to get a reward by winning a game. And that was kind of the first step in this journey towards, it feels like the loop gets shorter, right? So a game of FIFA, you're talking 20 minutes to reward. What was the next step towards that reward getting shorter for you?
I don't think the reward got shorter. You just got more reliant on the frequency of those rewards coming. And as well, you didn't have to put as much effort in for that reward. So it was very much that you could consistently keep doing it. So you could get that out of the video games and that kind of fills that part of your life up a little bit. And then you get it out of social media and it fills that part. And then you get it out of porn as well. And I was like vicariously living through people that would post on YouTube rather than myself. But at the time, obviously, I didn't recognize or realize that. But I would just spend my time watching all this content of other people kind of living this like exaggerated version of life, but it still is a present example of what their life is.
What kind of life?
I used to like watch a lot of like David Dobrik.
Just to give some context on who David Dobrik is and what kind of content this is, he's an extremely successful YouTuber. The most viewed video ever has 40 million views. The title is, all caps, "She said she'd never do this again." So I'll go watch that now. There's a lot of people yelling. More obnoxious men keep walking in and yelling. It's a lot of accusing people of sleeping with each other. It's like Big Brother if all of the cameras were handheld and the editors cut every 3 seconds. Now there's a child. What's he doing in here? Oh no, he just called the child fat to his face.
But it just like any of the typical like popular YouTubers from 15 until.
So is that kind of like the KSI era? I guess you got the Paul brothers. Is that that kind of time?
Yeah. So just like the whole shebang, really. Like just a whole lot of all of them, and yeah, you end up just being the consumer rather than being the producer of it. So you don't end up doing any of the stuff, but you're just kind of watching it. You're getting nowhere yourself, but you're kind of tricking your brain into feeling like it's actually getting somewhere.
Could you apply a similar logic when it comes to porn?
You just avoid how you feel, and porn can definitely facilitate that. And because you always get caught up, even like how social media is set out and the reels and stuff like that. Nobody ever says, "Oh, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on reels." There, you just get caught up, and then you've completely dissociated a little bit, and you don't really realize what you're doing.
Do you remember a point that you first went, whatever I'm doing here isn't good for me?
Recognizing like the lack of like relationships or sexual or romantic partners and stuff like that. After getting to like a certain age, like when you're in your teens and stuff like that, it's kind of fine in that case to not really have any romantic partners. But when it then continues to get older and there's no progression in that, then that's kind of a point that it just sparks up, and it's kind of then thinking about, why isn't that the case? Is it maybe it is how I'm acting and what I'm like, but also it might be because of the like content that you consume, or if you're using porn and stuff like that. So porn can provide that sexual satisfaction. If you begin to be wired in the sense that you're wanting quick and easy pleasure, you just kind of fall victim a little bit. And it just puts you in a bit of a weird cycle of just getting pleasure from avoiding your negativity. And then you just never face your negativity, and it just builds up.
He started to sound like he had no agency, that he was drowning in the endless stream of content.
I was very much just like, I'd be a person that would just go and do things because other people were doing it, rather than, do I actually genuinely want to go and do this or not? And that was because I don't think I had ever learned or really recognized what I truly wanted, and then had validation to go and do that.
That was replaced by this cycle of video games, social media, porn, like that just distracted you from being interested in anything else.
Yeah, and it might have provided validation for those activities that I didn't actually want, but they were like the replacement ones that were easily accessible, that then I gravitated and relied so much more on.
But he managed to fight against the current.
And so, for instance, like my YouTube algorithm has now changed, so it's not just so entertainment based, and that kind of then puts me off just kind of maybe binge watching it in an afternoon or whatever.
So you've managed to take what was perhaps an unhealthy habit that made you feel not so great about how you were using your time, and you've managed to change that relationship.
Yes, so it's all like based on willpower. So when you resist, it kind of builds up, and then you end up giving in and doing it. And it's really like, you're kind of like battling with it. You're like fighting with it. And in the end, it's actually coming to like peace with what that thing that you're fighting with. Like the hardest thing to fight with isn't the technology, isn't to stop yourself from doing it, but it's actually yourself. It's like that part of you that's inside that's needing this reliance on those different things. And when you then come to terms with that and you then start to face it, it's something that's really, really, really difficult, because your brain has programmed yourself so much to avoid, to just get away, to try and do anything to not deal with that thing. Again, I came across that YouTube channel that was Healthy Gamer, and I'd just been casually like watching the content. And during COVID, I'd spent a lot of time playing video games whilst just like listening to the interviews and stuff. And I was just genuinely really interested in it.
The YouTuber that Adam's referencing here is a guy who goes by the name of Dr. K, who has a YouTube channel, a Twitch stream, and a company that are all called Healthy Gamer GG. He has millions of subscribers across these platforms and is apparently a qualified psychiatrist.
It's hard because there's a lot of people that are telling you a lot of different things, and it's hard to know what to believe on social media as well. But from how he was describing and the like comments that like kind of come back, they were like a Harvard psychiatrist. They just, whatever they're talking about, just did all make sense, and basically just consumed that content casually, and then just started actually taking the advice that person was suggesting. But it's not just like self-help. It was very much more like proper mental health advice. I mean, my explanation doesn't do it any justice, but you've got all these people online to giving you all this self-help stuff. And it's I find it just a little bit waffly. And this person's just a bit more specific in, maybe because of his training, and he also trains, he's also like spent years like practicing like as a monk or like meditation and a mix of like Eastern and Western medicine. So he just kind of combines both of them. You just pick up little bits over time. And then when just following a simple video of just like tried to journal instead. So then once I started just journaling like casually, then you were able to just not end up using any emotional-based coping mechanisms, so like video games, porn, social media, or stuff like that. You would then just write it down, and then you just write, and it's just a better way of like getting it out there. And then you kind of like let it pass rather than avoid it. You're starting to face it.
Your problem started with video games and social media and porn, and then social media pushed you in the direction of the solution as well. What was the first interaction with these videos then? Did it just autoplay someday, or did you see a thumbnail that you were like, oh, maybe I'll listen to that?
It would have been from other YouTubers doing like collabs with that person and then just watching them. And I think it was just from that. I think I'd just seen that they were doing videos with the few like YouTubers that I'd watched, and I then over time just was like, yeah, just give them a go. It just happened that they were actually really good at helping, and there's like there's a danger to it because that can happen as well. And there's YouTubers like Andrew Tate or like Jordan Peterson and stuff like that kind of have a lot more of like a stronger agenda, not really that good of a way of like dealing with it. But because they match their audience really, really well, the audience kind of just like falls into the trap of it. Somebody like Jordan Peterson, for example, uses lots of complicated and hard to understand like vocabulary and words, so it makes him sound a lot more clever than he actually is. And then because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about, you just kind of fall into it. But he ends up just putting you down like the wrong direction. It's not really to help you. It's kind of just for the benefit of himself. From my point of view, maybe I'm wrong.
I did think coming into this conversation, I was wondering whether you'd gone down that route, because you are describing exactly that archetype that understandably, but unfortunately, finds a lot of solace in the Andrew Tates, who on the surface, some well-established self-help techniques, but then it's the other stuff they believe that you start getting into, and somehow you've managed to completely circumvent that funnel that people fall down. Is it just luck?
It's not luck. That awareness that you build up, that you can then recognise like what their actual intent is. I mean, it's so much harder as well if you're like a younger like teenager. It's really difficult to be able to notice that, because you don't really know of yourself yet, never mind what the intentions of somebody else is that's online that kind of match your belief and stuff.
So is it your age? Is it being, so you're 24?
5 now.
25?
Yeah.
So being in your early 20s at the point where you were seeing this, did that give you a bit more life experience, a bit more media literacy to be able to go, they're not the ones I'm going to listen to for my advice?
It's not age, and it's not age. It's not like necessarily maturity either. It has just been my past experiences through the years. But again,
what are those experiences?
I don't know, because it'd just be like, I even can't, like, there's not like a particular experience was like, oh, I was watching this, and then actually, no, not that.
It sounds like you've got quite an intellectual interest in it, which I suppose means that you're more likely to listen to people who make logical sense rather than those who are clearly beginning a grift, who are eventually going to try and sell you cryptocurrency.
It's like, how do you know that they're making logical sense, though? Because...
Have you seen friends or other people you know go down that route, down the Andrew Tate?
Yeah, I've noticed... It doesn't have to necessarily be friends, but you just notice people like online, particularly as well, going down that path a little bit, and you can see the way that they're suffering, and they're just searching for an answer because they just don't really know what they're dealing with, and I'd take it all the way back to, it's just trauma, and the trauma that you've faced is now making you like feel a certain way, and through the accessibility of like the internet and stuff, it does provide easy facilitation to just avoid it. And you then subconsciously you do know that you don't actually want to be living like this, because it's not actually giving you any fulfillment, it's just giving you pleasure. And you end up then spending time just on YouTube a little bit, and you just kind of stumble across this, and then when you then listen to a podcast like this and you hear somebody talk about something, oh, I relate to them, and then you start following them, and then you just kind of get trapped into it. And the biggest takeaway from all of this, for other people and just for myself, is if the best thing is just to not like spend any time gravitating towards these people and like searching for an answer. The best thing to do is just kind of get off.
So if you're feeling that lack of direction, the lack of agency, your advice after all of this, even though it is a YouTuber, someone making videos who helped you, your advice is leave it. Don't go there. Don't look for your answers in the internet. Look for it offline.
Yeah, definitely. I think people can definitely use YouTube and social media to help give them some answers, but there's that many people out there that it's impossible to find exactly what you need, really. So for me, it's been since I started like consuming YouTube when I was a teenager until like now in the past like year or so, when I stumbled across somebody that could actually help. I mean, spent a lot of time going, oh, they could, I relate to these people or I relate to that person. It's a lot of time spent just kind of consuming stuff. Just sit and just like face a wall and stare at a wall for like an hour, and then just kind of let yourself feel all this stuff. You let yourself feel that feeling a bit.
Right. So the answer's not on the internet. You just need to sit there and be. What I'm trying to avoid saying, because I feel like it's the cringest thing ever, what I'm trying to avoid saying is the sentence, the answer is inside yourself. because that sounds glib and awful, but it also sounds like it might be true.
Although glib, this seemed like a fairly neat story. It was satisfying to hear how the internet had been both the illness and the cure. It showed the complexities of our relationship with the internet, that we can't dismiss it as all bad or praise it as a net good. But then, after we'd finished recording, Adam sent me this message. The interview has made me come to a realisation about my consumption and reliance on self-help online content, and that yes, the info can be helpful, but it is actually holding me back from living my life. Yes, the content has helped me, but I've been trapped in the reliance of self-help content, which has meant I've done nothing but self-help for the past year. He then linked to a post he'd publicly made in the subreddit for Healthy Gamer GG, in which he discussed the additional content you could pay $200 to access, his distaste at it being a business with paywalled material, and his general disillusionment with self-help. That made sense. Our conversation had been peppered with vocabulary and ideas that had clearly been gleaned from elsewhere. And it all boiled down to this idea that internet addiction, playing too many video games, over-reliance on social media, watching too much porn, is all a distraction from trauma. Adam couldn't quite articulate the final piece of that puzzle.
It's like this, the answer is like inside yourself. It's not the external. It's like how you're actually reacting to it. It's how you're internally feeling about it. And if that is like a good positive thing, it's like, or if it's a negative thing, it's like this trauma that's like holding you back, and it's inside of you. It's not that the social media is a problem. It's like how it can be, but it's how you reacting to it, and that all comes from maybe a trauma that and that comes from the trauma that you have, but a trigger that then leads to that.
This is a question you absolutely can say no to, but what do you think those traumas were for you that you were avoiding?
I'm not sure, and I don't even know if there is, which then makes it even more confusing. Like, I don't think there is, but I'm open to I'm open to the possibility of it, but there's nothing that I think of that necessarily, or maybe I've just not like thought about it in depth enough, and maybe there is something, but maybe there isn't. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So you weren't avoiding a specific thing. You just ended up being distracted from finding something meaningful to do.
Yeah. And it just provides easier validation than it would.
And that revelation, after our conversation, led him to post his first YouTube video about a trip he had abroad, which he's proudly shared, declaring that he is now not just a consumer, but a producer.
You end up just being the consumer rather than being the producer of it.
Like he's gone from voyeur to participant. But that does still echo the words of his erstwhile favourite self-help YouTuber.
Started turning some consumption into production. Consumers. So we become consumers. We think that consumption is like laudable. And what I realized is I was just consuming. If I want to offer value as a human being, that doesn't come through consumption. It comes through production.
That was Adam. You can find a link to his video about his trip to Greece in the show notes. If today's episode has got you thinking about your internet diet, why not tell me about it? This week, Joel has sent me several screenshots of the unhinged Instagram ads he receives. They include a PS4 game called Arab Drift Cars 1, a nice retro-looking watch that, on further inspection, has a picture of Saddam Hussein on its face, and an image of a surgical theatre with the words "Hospital Castration Package" written across it. Joel has not told me whether he went ahead with any of these purchases. So if you have some similarly strange experiences you'd like to share, or if you'd like to tell me about your experiences with self-help online, please either write to me or send me a voice note at wattsonyourscreen@gmail.com. Thanks and have a good week online.